Hi all, this is Satisfying Cactus sprint review for sprint 6. Um, let's get started. So this was a 3-week sprint from the 29th of January to the 16th of February. We completed 175 story points. We still have 52 in progress and we have left 20 or 61 still to do. Quite a few things got added mid-sprint. We had about, 80 or 92 or 91 of these, but we completed 70 of them, so that's pretty good ratio. We didn't have really any retrospective comments other than this one I left. I finally got the last patch of the aligning the physical and virtual environments. This was unifying some of the config that we use between physical and virtual environments. That's about it for the slides, so I'm going to switch over to JIRA now. So we didn't have anything for container-based orchestration, deployments and build automation. Luca, I think some of these are yours.
Luca just stepped out to join another meeting right now.
Okay. So I actually think he completed most of these. So I'll get with him later and ask him about that, the SP network stuff, and the EBSG and the Debian file. I know I helped him with. So documenting satisfying Cactus. The first couple are mine. We now have a security list for Chord. You can email security@openchord.org and you'll get a canned response that says that your message was received. A few people are on that list, Andy, me, Luca, and Suchitra. So that process exists. The next couple items that I didn't get to are actually in flight. They're things that are more things for the guide. And is Suchitra there? I think she might be on PTO. She updated the QA guide.
Yeah, she's not here.
Okay. Scott, you have a couple here?
Yeah, so the first one was updating example service tutorial to reflect dynamic load. That's done. Then we have write a service and synchronizer reference guide. That's not started yet. Going on down, we have VTN documentation needed to be updated to reflect the APIs that we removed. That's done.
Okay. I have one in there. That's also I'm working on that. I don't think Mateo got to starting the program documentation. I think that's waiting until next release once Ecord is done with it.
It's actually started. There is a draft in Gerrit. It's still private because program is a proprietary application, so I'm waiting the thumbs up from the owners to make it public. But I think they are pretty busy with MWC, so I'm not expecting them to review it before a couple of weeks.
Okay, thanks, Mateo. The next couple, is Jonah there?
No, they are in a meeting with for the ABC deployment.
Okay. So the Ecord docs to bring up Volta, I think Larry revised that from the document, and those are posted. Also, the vRouter stuff, Jono, I know, took care of. I think Gopi's off too. He had a document to do the control cube scenario, and that made it into the release as well. And the last one's Andy's item.
That is, so I updated the documentation to reflect the fact that we moved the profile manifests and pod configs into the profile repos.
Okay, moving on. Dynamic loading.
So Zach, one of those was Sapin's documentation prior to leaving. Do we know what all he got documented and where the documents reside?
Mateo, do you know more about that? I know you spent a lot of time with him while you're in Menlo.
So Sapan shared with me a document about the synchronizer design that is pretty verbose and I think pretty old. I can share it with you guys, and I have some notes that I took with while talking with Sapan. I'll share them too.
Okay, we should probably get those into the guide.
Yeah, so it sounds like maybe there's still a little bit more work to do to consolidate that before it goes out of all of our heads.
Yeah, for sure my notes needs to be consolidated because now I can barely understand what I wrote. So.
Okay, thanks Mateo, and thanks Scott for mentioning that. Moving on, dynamic loading and provisioning of services. I think this is mainly Scott.
Yeah, so migrate core models from static to dynamic load. That's still hung up on eliminating legacy attics in core models. The eliminate legacy attics in core models, I think I'm just waiting for Mateo's final review on that, and I don't think there's been much changes since his last review. So as soon as that one is plus-2'd in Garrett, it'll be going in, I think. So that item should be very close to done. The Tosca container should restart. I think that's been punted to next release. Sort of the same issue as the Chameleon container must restart.
Okay.
Those are in Luke's planning document, I think.
Okay, that I think is that changed priority from the previous one. I'm going to just move it into the next sprint right now.
Yeah.
And then change the priority on it to be a lot higher because
it's a blocker for Kubernetes, right?
It's a blocker for Kubernetes. So let's move that around. Alrighty, do you have any other comments on this?
Yeah, let's see what else is in here. Eliminate obsolete services. So we got rid of the Syndicate storage service, which, you know, we're not working on Syndicate actively. Plus, it was very, very old at this point. Eliminate obsolete onboarding recipes. So all of the onboard.yaml recipes that were in repos for Rcord and Ecord are gone. Mcord has still not been started. Update template service, that's done. And upgrade to Django 1.11 is done.
So just one thing about the ethics. I don't think we have many around now. How do we feel about officially deprecate them so we can remove them in 7.0?
I would like to make a high priority of eliminating the remaining attics. There's, you know, the core was the big one because it was big and complicated. The service attics are not going to be nearly as complicated. There's perhaps a day or two's work to get rid of the rest of them.
Yeah, so we should do that and add a deprecation notice in the library. So anytime you try to use the ethics, it will tell you we are going to remove them. I don't think we can remove them in this release, but in the next one, and we can start deprecating them in this one.
Yeah. So it is in Luca's document in there to get rid of the remaining attics. So if there's time to do that, I would work that in and get that done. Just because I don't think there's much work to it.
Okay, thanks, Scott and Mateo. Let's move on. Ecord, we didn't have anything for this sprint. Expanding QA coverage. Most of these were done. The new Jenkins jobs for Flex Labs, I think that's being held up by the Jenkins job builder and transition to the new Jenkins system. We'd have to talk to Suchitra about that, but I'll ask her about it.
Yeah, I have an update on that. She just wasn't able to get the job going for this to create it, but it didn't hold up the release or anything because it's just setting up that other pod for community collaborators. So she said she'll get to it as soon as she can, probably sometime next week if possible. So yeah, that task is still open. The other three there, I can speak to it briefly. We got our end-to-end data plane test running in the physical pods, and that's been running on 5.0 and master, so that everything's good there. And then we finished up creating the Jenkins job for soap testing on the Flex lab, and we've been catching issues and filing them, and everything looks good for this release. And then we update our wiki pages to document the specific system test results that we capture per release, and then also for the master branch for ongoing testing on the master branch. So we have a page for the current release for 5.0 and then the master branch, and we'll continue to add those per release on that page. So yeah, that's all from QA.
Okay, thanks, Kailash. Moving on, fabric features and improvements. Is Andrea or I know Andrea's on. Can you talk to these?
I can talk to basically all of them. So the things that got finished on my side were planned around T3. That's handling the DHCP. It's improving the support for hardware, meaning the OFDPA quirks that I needed support for debugging hardware. Handled dual links and handled the gateways. I have not finished up the multicast, which is the second one, because it was deprioritized in regards to other tasks that I had to put in. Also, ARP was done. The ones from Pierre are basically most of the ones that were ported from last sprint are done, and which are basically all the bugs. And they're all regarding multicast. So he did handle the device down. He did handle the forwarding of the traffic to the sink and deleting the multiple sinks, which did not update properly the groups. So that's done. Mostly other elements that he's not completed are already up for review. So it's not really something that was not done, but it's more in progress. And some of them got already +1s from most of the people. So we are expecting to merge them in as soon as possible next week.
Okay, that sounds really good, Andrea. Moving on, Ecord. Andy, I think you're probably the only one on here who has knowledge of these items.
Right. So the Ecord work for this sprint was largely structured around the MWC demo, and so I imagine that everybody else on the Ecord team is off furiously working on that demo. There's a lot of items here. I don't know that we want to go through them, or if I'm necessarily the best one to talk about it, but I can kind of give a summary of where I think things ended up after this sprint. So they have shipped a pod to Barcelona that was in sort of a working state, and they continued development on a pod at ONF, working out mainly issues with the various VNFs in conjunction with Intel and Sprint and other providers, and also working out issues with the physical eNode B. And so my impression is that the overall demo setup is more or less working right now on the development pod at ONF, and then the challenge is going to be to replicate that success on the other pod in Barcelona. It'll involve deploying some new software and new VM images, and I'm not sure what else. But that's more or less the overall status. I guess Mateo's been working on a program. Maybe he wants to talk about that.
Yeah, so the program synchronizer is done. It's working. We tested it yesterday. We found a small bug and we fixed it. It's still missing a complete end-to-end testing with a real inode beat, but I don't think that will be a problem since the almost application is configured properly and it is known to work correctly with the physical inode beat. So that should be okay. As a side note, it has been a really good experience for me because I learned a lot of things about the synchronizer and gave me some ideas on the framework, how to improve it and how to formalize like a full idempotence in it that now is kind of hacky to achieve.
Okay, thanks, Mateo. Moving on to maintenance. This is a lot of bugs that were solved.
Yeah, so let's see. Chord 647, I hope that's the oldest bug that was fixed in this sprint. So this actually hasn't been checked in. I'm still waiting for some reviews, but I fixed when I was trying to enable multiple nodes for Chord in a box, which I think is down the list somewhere. I'm not seeing it, but anyhow, maybe, yeah. Okay, anyhow, I was in the process of enabling Chord in a box to run multiple nodes to do testing on Chord. I fixed a bug that would cause the end-to-end test to break when you use multi-nodes. So that's finished. And like I said, it's not checked in yet, but hopefully I'll do that soon. The update default versions for a release, that was more just checking our documentation to make sure that we have documented all of the things that we need to change when we cut a new release. And that looked okay as far as I could tell. Onos doesn't load netconfig, so I updated the make file so that there's a new target make fabric refresh that worked around this problem of the old way of updating loading the netconfig into XOS wasn't working. So that's now working again. The flow has changed a little bit in that there used to be a file generated on disk that you could edit. Now that file is no longer generated, so you have to edit the configuration. If you need to make changes to the generated config, you need to do that in XOS. But it works. Let's see, what else? Rename XOS new Tosca config templates. I guess we had consensus that when we change to a new system and we've added new to things, eventually we want that new to go away once it's the only way of doing things. So I renamed this variable to take out the new, and that actually caused changes to cascade through the system, but that was sorted out. And I think that's all from me on this screen.
Okay, I'll go next. The Chord 1650 refactoring interface and bridge handling. Prior to this, if you had a multi-node setup, you had to use masks to configure the interfaces. There's now new roles to configure network interfaces. And that was needed to make things like PrepTod work and also to make all the Kubernetes that are multi-node configs work. So that's a big part of this. I don't think it's on.
Where are those roles kept, Scott? Are those?
Those are in platform install. It's named just interface config. They use templates to generate the fabric and management config.
Yep.
So the second one was updating the Ecord local test to the new Tosca engine. So there's the new Tosca engine changed how these Ecord, how the Tosca that was used in the Ecord local test, that was updated. It was also updated to use the same format that Andy pioneered for the Ecord tests, for putting the tests in the profile repo.
Pioneered, I like that.
2667, the Swagger documentation was broken. I fixed it. And then ONOS 2677, when we updated to ONOS 1.12, MAC addresses that previously were in unpadded, so if they had a 0 leading in the MAC address, previous versions of ONOS tolerated that, newer versions didn't, so we pad them now with leading zeros. That also was related to 2711. The VTN Fabric MAC, I changed it to being a template, but that broke things, so we changed it back to a static value that is shared throughout the system. And 2735, PrepRob broken with SSL error. The version of one of the Python packages that is installed breaks the Nova compute. So I had to reorder how some things were being installed so that that one of the updates to the Python library didn't break things. And hopefully this will all go away when we move to a new OpenStack and 1604 that probably installs better versions of these sorts of things. Scott, would you like to go next?
Sure. So 2661 was core exceptions lack tracebacks. I fixed this inside of the API helper module. I think Mateo has also fixed this problem inside of a different part of the core. So I think we have this one covered. Decal style models causing API and ORM issues. This had to do with reverse relations that were not found whenever the reverse was going to a decal style object. So that has been fixed. And then the last one was non-proxy model inheritance of a proxy model results in incorrect managers. So this was the deletion and the object managers when you did a decal model were not getting inherited properly, and this was resolved by the transition to Django 1.11. I think that's it for mine.
Okay, thanks, Scott. Mateo?
So 2715 was a bug that the guys working on the deployment found. Basically, it was a bug in the Tosca engine that if you were using a recipe to delete models in XOS and you had some models in there just for reference with a must exist set to true, it was deleting also those models, so was not behaving in the correct way. 2719, it is actually done. Basically, in the service graph, everything that didn't have a fixed position was jumping around anytime an event was received, and the synchronizers are pushing quite a lot of events, so it had these fancy effects with nodes in the graph jumping around all the time and making it basically useless. And 2720 was, since we moved in the previous sprint to use DNS names in the form of Docker Compose links to communicate between different components, I removed the console and registrator since they are not used anymore.
Okay, thanks, Mateo. We didn't have anything for offline limited access install. For our Chord, the Jono item, I think that this might be a duplicate with the other Volta documentation item, 2659. So I'll ask Jono about that. Refactoring build deploy. 2162 I didn't get to. That's actually making some changes to the way that Jenkins works. Hopefully that will get dealt with when we switch to Jenkins Job Builder. Chord 717, this is probably the second oldest thing we dealt with in this sprint. Previously, the Docker registry was being set up by mass. If we're not using mass as we try to transition to Kubernetes before we re-add mass, we needed a way to have a Docker registry. So there's a new implementation for that that uses SSL and uses client certs to auth against the Docker registry. And I think this last one is Luca's. So there was changes to mass to make it so that a different method of determining which OLT device was being used, and to do that using a platform, because I think the OUI was the same between an OLT and another device type. Unit testing framework, we don't have anything. Upgrade to Xenial, we don't have anything. Cleanup. So I completed two items here. There's fewer warning and deprecation messages in some of the Ansible scripts. And I went through and did a pass linting all the documentation in Markdown. You can now run a make lint in Chord build docs, and it will complain about issues with some of the documentation formatting. Also, I went through and made sure that all the links work again. And the other items in this, we'll probably get to probably some of the QA things in the next couple sprints. Creating a Kubernetes deployment within Chord. So Chord 2500 is related to Chord 717. That's setting up a Docker registry that Kubernetes can talk to. Chord 2521 we didn't get to. That's allow Kubernetes deployed by the build system to work on Mac. In VMs. We ran into some issues because of the way that VirtualBox works and assigns public VM addresses. I think this is probably a small amount of work now that we have interface config working inside that, but I haven't gotten to it because there was a big focus on it.
About this, because Kubernetes has a bunch of environment that you can simply run on Mac. There is any particular reason why can't we use one of those like Minikube and just deploy XOS on top of it?
We could. We'd need to figure out what how to get the Helm charts and move things around. I think what you're arguing for is for us to have like a Kubernetes local. Is that kind of what you're thinking of, Mateo? Like a local?
I think that was 521, no? Running Kubernetes locally.
Oh, okay. So let's talk to Gopi about whether that's something that he thinks would be practical and useful.
Because I think in on a Mac we won't be able to run any DNF anyway. So as long as we have a Kubernetes running, we can use our Helm chart to deploy our platform.
Okay, that sounds good. Let's explore whether that's something that's practical and possible. I don't see why not. It's just we need to make time to make it work.
Yeah, I'll drop a comment in there just to remember about it.
Okay. The next item was deploy XOS and ONUS chart using Helm charts. 2608 automated installation of Helm. We now are installing Helm with platform install and using it and bringing it onto the kubespray install to Kubernetes. Core 2501, migrating the XOS core Docker Compose spec to Kubernetes Helm. I think that's being held up by the Tosca and Chameleon restart issue. But we do have Helm charts set up. They're not fully fleshed out yet. Gopi has been working on that, though. The next few items are all we haven't dealt with, and they're more proactive. Those epics are probably going to be dealt with in this next couple sprints where we focus on Kubernetes support. Issues without epics. So first one is upgrading ONUS to 1.12, which I know is completed. The next two are Soppens items. So those are a static checker from Xproto. I think, Mateo, you might know more about that.
Yeah, so there is this, I will call it an alpha version of a checker for Xproto. Sapan quickly guided Scott and me through it last Friday. I think it's a really, really good tool. We will need to invest some time in documenting it and completing it. Do you agree, Scott?
Yeah, I agree, and it seems like we should try to get that done sooner rather than later before it atrophies and becomes useless at some point. It's a small amount of work to get it used and to the point where people will start interacting with it and issuing warnings and such for them. It'd be handy.
Okay, the next one, updating multi-struct log with Docker color support. That went in, and Docker logs are now printing color. Somewhat related, the log message is printed twice in Docker logs. This actually is completed. I know that I talked to Sapan and I committed this code after he had left, so I'm going to mark it as done. But that reduces the amount of log noise that's going on in the Docker containers. I think most of the rest of these items are yours, Mateo.
Yeah, so the first one was that service instance links were missing a validation on save, so we could actually create multiple links connecting the same two objects. And that can cause some problem in some situation and doesn't really make too much sense to me. There was an issue with underscore that models that the event received in the GUI upon deletion was containing the suffix, so the GUI wasn't able to map it to the actual model, and that has been fixed. There was 2671 was actually not an issue in Xproto, more a lack of documentation. So basically, if you mark a relation as optional using the option, but you leave required in the protobuf definition, that will be marked as mandatory. 2681, I didn't get the time to start it, but basically, if you try to save a model with invalid values, those values remain cached somewhere in the GUI, and it can be a little bit annoying. 2683, we added a new endpoint in the core that publish, given a service instance, given a service instance, it will publish all the provided service instance and the subscriber service instances. So if you need to read those from the APIs, you don't need to jump around multiple endpoints to get the information that you need. That one, I don't really remember what it is, but I think in one of the Ecord profiles, there were some old Tosca models. XOS core not printing stack trace in case of gRPC error is kind of goes together with Scott's patch from before. Now you'll receive a pretty descriptive information when you both in Chameleon and in the core that helps debugging stuff. I created and published a new document on a development loop to work on the synchronizer in the local scenario. Turned out to work pretty well, especially if you are writing a synchronizer that use ONOS or any other kind of REST APIs. And most of the others are Ecord related. But Chameleon was not reporting 404 status, but was throwing 500. That has been fixed. And I think that's it.
Okay, thanks, Mateo. Kailash, did you?
Which is
2684.
Oh yeah, that has been fixed. I fixed Ansible. I think the retry wasn't working in that. Yeah. So it wasn't registering the correct output of the curl response. So the retry just never taken place. So I fixed that.
Okay, thanks, Kailash. Andy?
So 2722, that's the one I was looking for earlier about enabling multiple compute nodes in Chord in a box. So you can bring up to 3 compute nodes. And the Ecord end-to-end test works when you have multiple compute nodes and things are on different nodes. 2724, this is for Chord, the EPC service. There was some what's the word I'm looking for? Scaffolding, I guess, in the EPC service that was supposed to enable binding virtual machines to nodes, but that wasn't working, and so I fixed it for those the services managed by the EPC.
Okay, thanks, Andy. This last item, I think, is Luca's, or it was assigned to Sem. This is related to mass and the update to 1604. So he did some updates to make the containers, the mass containers work with that, but we still have to work on how do we integrate that in the whole platform. That's it for JIRA.
Just another task, probably useless. The name is pronounced Chem.
Chem. It's Chem. Okay. Alrighty. Thank you, Mateo.
No problem.
Okay. And I don't think. Do we have any other retrospective comments? Does anybody?
I have a retrospective comment, which is yesterday we released Satisfying Cactus, and so 5.0.0 is out in the world. So this, I believe that was the culmination of this sprint, and so that actually happened. So yay for us.
And was it satisfying?
It was very satisfying.
I think this overall this dev cycle has been pretty good. I think part of the reason was that we had the 4.1 halfway through, so we were focused for quite a while on getting things stable. And I think if we look at this compared to some other sprints, I think we got more done, or we reached a more complete point than we have in the past. I know there was not as much churn with QA at the very end about things being broken and needing to be fixed. There was some, but not an incredible amount. Does anyone else have comments about that?
Well, I just wanted to agree with what you said. I think part of it is that the 4.1 release gave us kind of an intermediate checkpoint, and that helped. And part of it is maybe we're just getting better at being able to estimate work and figure out how much we can actually get done in a sprint.
And part of it is Zach's guidance.
I don't want to take that much.
His Scrum mastery.
I don't want to take that one. I'm not going to take all that credit, but
we'll give you a little.
Okay. So
I think the shorter release time helped us in containing the scope. So we didn't have the time to introduce enough bugs to make it hard to have the release. And I think if we can move more and more in this direction, eventually separating the release of the different components, we will find ourselves in a better position when doing releases.
I think that's correct, Mateo.
I agree, and I think it's partially just because what we have underneath this is now a little bit more complete, and we don't feel compelled to massively change it.
Okay.
Massively change it. No pun intended.
Yeah. That comes in the next sprint or two. So, moving forward, next we kind of have a little bit of downtime. The next sprint planning isn't until, or the release planning is on the 21st. We haven't set an exact date for the sprint planning. So we kind of have, if you have little things to clean up or other stuff, we're going to have a lot of meetings, but if you have time to do some develop work before the sprint officially starts, go ahead and do that sort of stuff. Release planning is next Wednesday, the 21st, from 10 to noon Pacific, and then sprint planning will follow. I'm going to be away for the next couple of weeks, so I've been passing the Scrum Master torch over to Mateo, although Yen, I think, mentioned that she wanted to help too, so I'll let, I'll throw the,
Just throw the torch at it.
Yeah, I'll throw the piece of meat into the middle of the arena and you guys can battle it out.
Yeah, to do the torch to Yen.
This may be not battle it out, but who steps furthest back or who doesn't step furthest back.
Okay. So I think we're pretty good going forward.
Just a short poll. Can Thursday 10 a.m. work for everyone to do the sprint planning?
That's the 22nd.
Yeah, the day after release planning.
I don't see why not. If you want to put it on the calendar, go right ahead. Let's do that. I'm going to be on a plane or somewhere else, and I will be around via email and other things periodically. So, but good luck, everyone, with planning for the next sprint. And if there aren't any other comments, could you repeat that?
Have fun on your vacation.
Thank you, Mateo. Alrighty, I'll talk to everyone later.
See ya.
Thanks. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye.